Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Facilitating Community Feedback Sessions. I'm Kevin Aguano, I'll be your host. This is one in a series of webinars that we run roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year. These sessions are free thanks to generous support of our speakers and our sponsors. And these are a give back that we give to the community where you can learn and earn some professional development credits and get introduced to some new concepts and topics you might not be familiar with. Today, I would like to welcome our presenter, Ellie Braham. But before I do, let me thank our sponsors. We were generously supported in this particular webinar by a number of sponsors. Procept Associates, whom Ellie works for today, Tidal Shift, and Barnes & Conti. Procept is primarily a project management and related training company. Tidal Shift focuses on change management and leadership development, and Barnes & Conti is a US-based leadership development organization. We've also received generous support from MCAC, the Mechanical Contractors Association of Canada, PMAC, the Project Management Association of Canada, and 4 PMI chapters. The PMI Lakeshore, Ontario, PMI Durham Highlands chapter, PMI New Brunswick, and PMI Ottawa Valley Outaouais chapter. Thank you, all of you, for generously supporting this webinar and promoting it to your membership as well. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Ellie. We're very happy to have her here today. Ellie's a highly experienced project leader. She has many years of experience in senior project leaderships in large corporations like CIBC, IBM, eHealth Ontario, and other large organizations. She's also worked in the nonprofit sector, and we're really lucky to have her and her experience here today. She has extensive experience in adult education, has a master's in education with a specialty in adult teaching and learning from the University of Ottawa, and also has taken Durham College's certificate in adult education. Her expertise and background is very broad. She's worked on many types of projects in many different industries over the years. And she brings that expertise to us today as she talks about community feedback sessions, both within organizations like residential associations, like condo associations, getting feedback from their residents. If you are a government body or agency of some kind needing feedback from the public, how that can be better managed, or even within a corporation, if you need feedback from your teams, from your staff, how you can use these techniques to facilitate those feedback sessions as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Ellie, but before I do, there are a couple rules. Right now, everybody's muted. If you have questions that arise during the presentation, if you would like to ask a question, I'm going to hold the questions. We're going to do Q&A at the end. So for those of you on the live webinar, there is a questions tab or a questions interface. On your web interface, it'll look like a little word bubble with a question mark in it. Click on that. You can type in your question and we'll hold those and we'll ask her at the end. So you can collect them along the way as you go so you don't forget them. And then at the appropriate time, we'll read them out and Ellie will have a chance to ask them. Obviously, for those of you watching this via the recording, you're not going to be able to ask the live questions. But if you do have questions for Ellie afterwards, you can always email us at sales@procept.com. That's sales@procept.com, and we will get that question out to her and get an answer for you. Okay, also during this presentation, there may be some interaction where Ellie asks you to answer a question. You can type those answers in the chat window on your web interface. It looks like a couple of thought bubbles or word bubbles. You can just click that and enter in your comments in the chat window. If all you see is the question window, that's okay. Just type them in the questions window. We'll deal with it. Just get them in there somehow, some way, and we will get your feedback to Ellie. Okay, thank you very much. Ellie, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm so happy to be here with everybody. But before we get started, let me just tell you, why am I here? I know Kevin did a fantastic job with introducing me, but ultimately consulting and PMO leadership, that's really been my space. And so I've spent over 30 years in consulting technology and also the PMO leadership. And I also I'm that person that you kind of bring in when things aren't going so well. So I do recovery programs and also deal with those troubled and challenged things that we come across during our projects. And I'll tell you what I care most about and what today is about. It's that part where our resistance turns into readiness. Because we know we work with a lot of stakeholders and different personality types, and some people are really resistant to that change, or they're not necessarily liking what you're coming at them with. So, especially this being a feedback session, we ultimately want to make sure that we work on getting those people on our side. So, because in my experience, what I find is that we can turn those situations into opportunities. I love problems because I don't see them as a problem. They're opportunities. It's just that perspective shift in our mind and how we present ourselves in that room. So before we get started, I got to tell you a story. And this story is called the Orange Story. So let me share this with you. As you can see here in my little picture that I've got going on. I got a brother and sister. They're both wanting an orange. And the brother wants the orange because he's hungry. He's been out playing ball all day. And the little girl wants the orange because she's going to be baking a meringue pie. And so with that, they go to mom and say, Mom, we need an orange. And mom's like, absolutely. However, I only have one. But they both want a whole orange. What are we going to do? So let me tell you, the story is going to take us, okay? Because it's going to be all about what we're going to be talking about today. But what is each one of these situations being asked of from the brother and the sister? One needs the orange peel because she's making a meringue pie. She's going to grate those. And the little boy, he's wanting that flesh inside that orange because he wants to eat it all. But we got one orange, and we need to meet both needs. Make sure it's fully met. But what happened? What did mom do? Oh my. Mom said we're going to split the orange in half. So she gave half to the little one, the little boy, and he's like, this is hardly going to fill me up or make me feel like I even had anything. And the little girl's like, but my recipe requires all of the orange peel. So this is where, we take a step back and we think of what was decided and what was not decided. And when we sit back and think of what was decided, mom chose to decide herself and say, hey, we just got one orange. We're not going to negotiate it. No amount of discussion. Second orange, I don't have another option, right? It's still wide open. It's wide open for thinking of some other thing, but she chose to just divide it up. And this is where our whole story is going to begin. So I really want you to thought and this story, because when we get to part 3 of the presentation today, I'm going to be able to show you another approach that mom could have done to make sure that we got a win-win going on for everyone, which is what we really want to have when we're dealing with our stakeholders. And so with that, we're going to go in and talk about a feedback session. And as you heard from Kevin, this could be a condo, right? Where you've got a renovation of some common areas. But guess what? The board already decided and signed the contract with the contractor. So hold that thought as well. Could be a park, right? Municipalities, there's some changes going on, but council's already approved it. And the budget envelope's already been set. And you're one of the community members that are going to be users of this park. Could be a policy change. Maybe the CEO's decided, you know what, we're going to change the rules on how people book their vacation. And HR has already decided what that blockout period is going to be, what's coming, where people cannot block out their vacations. So where does this leave us then? My story, the situation that I was in. And this is the story that I'm going to take you on the journey of 3 great tools that can really help us in these dilemmas that we get into, where decisions are made, but we're seeking feedback from our stakeholders at the same time. And my situation is I've got a really tough one here, where I had to integrate 4 systems to replace these older tools. The license expiry date was already set, timeline is set, execs already made the decision on what the tools are going to be. Now I've got to bring this to those that are going to be impacted by this change in more than one way and see how they handle it. So with that, this is what we're going to walk through, because ultimately all these 4 scenarios, they're all covering the same thing. So let's take a step back to say, well, what is the definition then of the feedback sessions that we're talking about? Well, you're bringing people together in all of these scenarios who are going to be affected by that decision, and they had no say in the decision that's being made. You need their feedback. And not only that, you need them to participate in this change that you're going through while you have no authority over those folks. And this is where today's scenario is going to land with us as we go through the mechanics of how we take a look at managing feedback sessions, especially when we don't have any authority and decisions have already been made. And this is where I'm going to demonstrate with you 3 tools that are going to be in action. First and foremost, we got a plan. Got to know your audience, KYA. And not only just knowing your audience, you've got to be able to facilitate that room, so you're going to have to read the room. So how do we do that? I'm going to give you some tips on how you can make that happen, and quickly, without even having to memorize the tools that I'm sharing with you. And then lastly, control. You got to put those tools to work that I'm giving you. So I'm going to give you those tools, show you them. And a really great one is the GROW coaching model. People might think of coaching that we only use when we're doing one-on-ones, but I'm going to demonstrate and show you how you can actually use coaching methodologies within a group coaching session, so that we can move people away from disagreement to a better answer than the one they would have had handed down to them, let's say from maybe us from our own experience. And when we go and think about facilitating, understanding and reading that room, we're going to take a look at DISC and emotional intelligence. And we're looking at emotional intelligence from a different lens, a different author, from a perspective that really fits our model here. And last but not least, which I started out with first, is we need to understand the directions of influence. Who's in the room? Which way are they leaning for that change? What kind of influence do they have within the organization? And what do each of them need from you? Just as we understand from our orange story, the 2 kids were looking for a full orange. Mom knew they needed a full orange, but she only had one. So let's see how this plays out in my show. So let me set the stage with you as we focus on the plan. And we're going to look at tool number 1, preparing for the feedback session. And this is the time and space, I will say, you want to put the most energy into, because the more you plan for, the more prepared you're going to be. Prepare, 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 because you can't prepare enough. So let's start with planning, okay? Because when a change has already been decided, your job is no longer to try to sell it. Sometimes, unfortunately, we walk in the room with that mindset. I want to show you how you can take it from another perspective, because you're really here to find out what is important and what people that are there, what do they need for them to come alongside this change that you've got to implement now. And PMI is really, really direct about the change management practice of when we bring in change, how we need to address it, because resistance to change, it doesn't often come from the place that we think it does. It comes from the manifestation of dissatisfaction with the solution of what we're implementing rather than with the change itself. So they're fighting how it's going to be done to them. And so this is where we want to add something else, something a little different, something that creates a greater barrier than people who feel like they had no input. And I want to teach you how we can navigate through that. So both of these are planning problems, okay? They're not facilitation problems. No great facilitator is going to be able to solve for these 2 problems. They don't like the solution, and they don't like the fact that they didn't have any input in what's coming their way. So with that, let's dive into it. The first tool we're going to look at is the directions of influence. And PMBOK, that's PMI's Book of Knowledge, it gives us this way of understanding the social network around a project, specifically as a way of understanding the social network, because that's literally what we're dealing with here. In this scenario, we're dealing with the dynamics of how they see us and how we see them, and also each other and how they interact and influence each other within that room. Because you'll notice some personality types will influence others to kind of sway their way. And we're going to explore a little bit of that when we take a look at the DISC tool. So let me share with you, and this is really, really simple tool from an understanding perspective of who are those stakeholders. And even if it's the municipality, you don't know, of course, all the individuals that live in the community. However, though, you can kind of make some assumptions, and I'm going to even encourage you to use AI to say, I've got this facilitation session to do, and these are all the people that are going to be in the room. What kind of things can I look out for? And they'll kind of help you be able to assess if that individual stakeholder is upward, downward, outward, or sideward. So let's find out what these are. So when we start with upward, upward is like your senior management. In a community setting, it could be the person that's the loudest one in the room, maybe the person that's most known in the community. If it's something of a policy change that's happening within the organization, sit back and think of your own space and what that might look like, because it doesn't necessarily have to be senior management, right? It could be your sponsor, it could be a steering committee, or even another organization like a customer organization. And what they need from you is what's going to be important. And this is the part that's going to set the stage for you as you get ready and plan to walk into that feedback session. Confidence, that's the decision that's going to hold. Evidence of movement, they want to know that things are progressing and any early warning signs of any risk that's coming up. Now let's flip our brain over to the downward side of things, because downward is your own team. And the specialists that are lending you that knowledge, what they need is they need to have a clear scope. What's the work you want me to do? They need some realistic timelines. How many times have we been in a room with our team and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can commit to that, because we all get a little nervous, right, if we can't keep to our promises. So we want to find a way. How do we get someone to commit that doesn't want to commit? We're going to explore that as well. And then, of course, they want to be asked before you commit them. I can't enough. Sit back and think for yourself. Somebody committed you to something that you didn't agree to, and ask yourself how that made you feel. We don't want to do that with our team either. So be sure that you get their agreement before you commit them to something that you're agreeing to, that they're going to be held accountable for. Okay, now we're going to go to the outward. And outward is really everyone that's got a stake, who sits outside your team. Could be your end users. It might be residents that not necessarily showing up or might show up to your session. It could be suppliers or regulators that you've got to deal with. Could be the public. But what they need to know is what is decided, what is generally open for negotiations or discussions, and what will happen to the input that you give them or that they give you. Are you going to come back or do anything with it? How many times have we been to sessions and we don't hear anything afterwards? Or even meetings, we might have been invited to a meeting, but we didn't get minutes afterwards to know what was the outcome and what were those actions maybe that we had to do. So let's keep that thought in mind as well. And last but not least, we got sideward. So when we're looking at sideward, those are our peers, other managers who are either competing with you for the same resources or they're sharing them. And what they need is they need visibility of the dependencies that you have going on, and they do not want any surprises for directions, for completely different conversations. And if you send all four the same invitation, you've already made your first mistake. And let's dive in to understand why. Because we got to map the room before we send the invite out. So let's show you what tools that are going to likely help us. And this is a real room. And this is my scenario that I went through. And it's all about a business unit. They're having to integrate 4 systems that they're replacing. And the for systems they're replacing, they were really old. Oh, I believe the employees must have been working with them for like 10, 15 years. Processes are really entrenched, that as well. But guess what? The execs made a decision with the contracts coming up for renewal and where things are going, they are going to swap out these 4 tools to make it because they see an opportunity of efficiencies. And contracts are already signed. The third-party vendor's ready to go. And by the way, the old licenses lapse at renewal. So I've got 15 people that are going to be coming in here, and there are 4 who matter most. Not that everybody isn't important, but for today's session, we're only going to focus on the 4. And the names and places have been changed to protect the innocent, as they like to say. So let's look at our first person. Our first person is Marcus. And when we think about Marcus, Marcus is the upward resource or stakeholder that we have going on in our meeting. And Marcus, he's our executive sponsor. And what's going to matter most, if you recall what I said at the previous slide, Marcus is going to be looking for a date. He wants a date because he wants to make sure that he can keep the steering committee up to date on what's going on. After Marcus, we got Yvonne. And Yvonne's our downward aspect of where she lands in that direction of influence. And Yvonne, she's my learning lead. She's got 40 workflows, 6 weeks. I didn't mention that earlier, but we're at 6 weeks that we need to start working on these tools coming into play for the team. And by the way, no one has any idea of which of these workflows are actually being used by anybody. So what does she need? She needs scope. Remember, this is your team. They need to know what's the work that they're being committed to, because she does not want to commit. She can't without knowing what she's got to build. All right, so the next person I have on my feedback session in that directions of influence is my outward guy, Dan. And Dan's been with the company for 19 years. He's been with this business unit, and he's the person everyone goes to. Every new hire goes to Dan, and even people that have been there for a while when they get stuck. So he's got no authority on paper, okay, but he's got complete power to let this fail quietly. All right. My last person that we're going to bring into my scenario here is Sideward, and that's Priya. And she leads a peer team, so she's my peer, and we're sharing the same testers, and she's really vocal, and she is really well liked by everybody as well. And she's already told half the floor the timeline is a joke. You know, things happen, right? Now, I want to kind of send you back to Dan with me here for just a moment. Because when you look at Dan on this org chart that we're looking at here, and everybody else that's going on, this is the ability to determine whether this actually is going to work or not. It's going to be Dan. And this is the person, the one person that every single time is going to be that person that's going to be missed. So I'd like you to ask, I'd like you to think about proximity as real power as well. Because power doesn't necessarily come from our titles. It can also come from your proximity to the team and how the team sees you. So with that, your very first 4 minutes of that feedback session, what you're going to do, the single most important call that you can make before the invitation goes out. Almost every decided change is going to hold these 2 things at once. And the mistake is to run your session as though it holds only as one. People got a choice here. They got a choice on whatever systems that you're deciding on or whatever decision has already been made. So this is where we're going to have an issue. You got to let them know up front. These are the things that have already been decided. There's no discussion around them. Which are the 4 systems? The contracts are executed. Can't do anything about that. The old systems are going away. Can't do anything about that either. The other 4 that are going live, guess what? They all got to go live together. Can't change that either because they're all so integrated. You can't do one without everything coming together itself. And then the last thing, right, is the license renewal dates. That's what's really pushing hard on what that outer boundary is, my constraint being the fact that I've got to hit a date before those older systems renewal comes up to play. So you got to generally be open on what you need from them. And this is how you send out that invite. Set the stage before you even walk into the room. Seek which group is going to go first and identify why. What ready means before the cutover happens. What are the workflows that you're actually looking for training for folks? Well, you're going to be your volunteers because you need somebody from the business to test things out to make sure things are going okay. And then what support looks like at that 4 o'clock on a really bad day. People know I got a brand new system. I've got reports I got to get out. Where's the project team? You got to let people know up front. So your right-hand column is not a consolation prize. This isn't like a win-win kind of thing here. It's going to decide whether the program succeeds or not. And it's also going to be worth it when we look at that tool selection, if it's going to do the work that we need to, but we need to be the ones to drive what we're looking for from this group. I always tell people, put that agenda together, make sure we're really clear on what the objectives are that we want to achieve coming out of that meeting. So last thing, before we go into the room, got to set a realistic target. PMBOK gives us this matrix with 5 levels of engagement. How engaged are people? And what we want to do is we want to plot each group on this little diagram that you see here. And it's not where you would love them to be. It's not where you want them to be, because the worst thing you can do as a facilitator is try to drive everybody over to that left side of leading. And so when you look at this, we've got unaware. That means that stakeholder had no idea about what this project is about. We got those that are resistors, and I'll tell you this, and this is an important one for you, okay? That resistor that you have, if you can move that resistor to neutral, that is a big win. That's a bigger win than you can even imagine it can be, all right? And really, that's what's going to be important for you as a facilitator and as you drive into these. It's also going to take away the defensible upstairs kind of mentality. I don't want you to be defensive on what matters, because movement on that matrix, it's just really your reportable outcome. It's not, it's not a soft skill. You're really interested, and your sponsor's going to be happy too, that you can show and demonstrate, this person was really resistant, but I moved them over to being neutral so we can get this over the finish line. So you don't need to know all aspects of this model, but I'll say it really quickly. Unaware, I mentioned what that is. We all know what resistance is all about. Neutral, well, you're not for or against it. You're willing to play in the play field, but you're going to be a little skeptical as you go along, and that's okay. Supportive, you're gung-ho, you're ready. That's probably the individuals that are going to be our testers, right? And then leading, oh my gosh, those are the people that are your champions out there, right? Saying this is going to be a really great opportunity for the company and so on. But like I said earlier, keep it in mind, we don't need everybody supportive or leading. Let's at least move them from resistant first. Because ultimately, when we do that, it's really about sitting back and thinking, what is it that will move people on that continuum where we want to shift them over to the right? And this is going to come from, oh my goodness, Kilman. So Kilman, he teaches us that how we kind of shift with change and why people will kind of go along with it. Sometimes it's compliance. They're going to follow the new way because it's the rule. They just don't want to break the rules. Identification, they got to adopt it because people that they see around them that they respect a lot have adopted it, so they might as well get on that train as well, right? And then there's internalization, and that's really the one we really like because they believe it is the right thing to do. But again, for a decided change, compliance from some groups is going to be that legitimate target and where we have to lead from. So with that, I want to give you a moment to sit back and think back of when you've attended a feedback session, whether it's past or present, maybe you were leading it or you were a participant. Now let's take it from the participant lens. You're the participant and you're being told and forced on you a decision that's been made. I want you to take a moment to think of what was that first emotion that comes back to you as you remember it. As soon as that memory comes in, I'm going to pause. And those of you watching the video, I want you to think and do the same. Now you got that emotion. Oh, it's bringing back maybe fond memories or maybe not. Hopefully it's fond memories, but hey, I want to hear the maybe nots too. And if you're apt to it, let us know in chat that one word or even write it down, okay, so that you can look at it later. What is that one word that you could stipulate where your emotion was? Were you angry? Were you frustrated? Were you anxious? Were you worried? Whatever that looked like for you. Just write it down on a piece of paper because I do want you to reflect on it at the end of our webinar here. And then ask yourself, what directions of influence were you in? And did it align to what we talked about on what that direction of influence is looking for? So let's dive in to part 2. The next one is we got to know your audience. And facilitating the session is where it's all going to come together for you. Kevin, I don't know if it's someone on our call, but I am hearing some background sound. I don't know if you are as well.
I had unmuted to give you what people had entered into the question and chat screen.
Oh,
From
please
the
do
prior
share.
slide. Yeah, so we actually had somebody say outward, and we had an upward. Those were the 2 responses.
Thank you. Keep those in mind. Now I know when you're coming off mute. I will stop talking, Kevin. So this is where I'm going to introduce to you our discommunication styles. And we are in the room now. And the question is how you read the people that are in the room. And I want to introduce DISC. And let me be clear about where we're going with this, because I'm not asking you to do the assessment with me right now. We don't have time, of course, in the webinar. But on the handout that you're going to get at the end of the session, you will get a link to a free DISC assessment, and all of the tools that I'm sharing, the 3 tools that I'm sharing with you here, I've got additional insight, quick guide for you to be able to reference all of this back. I should have mentioned that earlier because y'all don't have to be screenshotting or taking notes or whatever. I've got it nicely packaged for you at the end. What is DISC? And maybe some of you know DISC out there. And if you do, throw it in chat. I can tell you I've done the DISC assessment and I'm an IC, just to throw it into perspective. And by the way, ICs, I work really well with those Ds, and we're going to learn what all of these are. So with that, I want to introduce this to you really quickly, but DISC reads behavior and it takes it from 2 drives or perspectives. The first is your pace and how quickly a person tends to act, speak, make decisions. Some people decide out loud in real time, and others, they need to go away and think about it. The second is priority. And priority is whether someone focuses first on tasks and results or on people and relationships. And neither is better, okay, and neither is wrong. They're just different starting points. And so those 2 drives interact to form 4 predictable patterns of behavior. And once you can spot the pattern, you know how to open the conversation. And just as importantly, you know what will also shut the conversation down with this communication style. So here we go. First one is our D, dominance. And dominance is fast-paced, task first. And this is Marcus, my stakeholder in my room, my sponsor. Direct, decisive, impatient with detail. If you open with background and context, you will lose him in 20 seconds. So you got to be brief. Lead with the bottom line. The bottom line is just that. What is the bottom line? Just get to the point. That's another way that we could say it for our Ds, but be brief, okay? And give him some options. We're talking about Marcus, but whoever that D is, give them some options so that they can pick one. All right, next one is our I, and that's influence. And influence is fast-paced, people first. This is Priya. She's verbal, enthusiastic, persuasive, and she brings other people with her, which is exactly why she is dangerous to ignore. Sorry, my slide went over a little bit faster than I planned. My mouse can be a little bit sensitive at times. And then we're going to move on to, before we, right? You want to communicate with Priya. You want to acknowledge her and be certain that you're open to any suggestions or ideas she has by just writing them down and letting her know, yeah, let's take a look at that. Okay. The next one is our S for steadiness. That's someone that's pace. And this is our Dan. And remember Dan, he's our senior veteran. He's been with the department. He's the proximity of where my program could go offside. But you know what? Those S's, they're calm, they're loyal, they're deeply uneasy with sudden change. Okay, he will say almost nothing unless you make room for him. So you got to slow the pace down, signal change early. You want to invite his view directly by name. So call him out by name so that you can say, hey, Dan, I'd love to get your perspective. All right. And the last one that we have is our C's. Our C's are conscientiousness. Okay. And conscientiousness is steady pace as well. Task first. That's our Yvonne, right? She's my lead, my learning training lead. And Yvonne, precise, analytical, evidence-driven, all right? Bring the data, answer the why for those C's, exactly, and allow Yvonne some time and never force on the spot, yes, because they need some time to go away and think about things, and you cannot reverse that, all right? So I'll give you one caveat, and I mean it. Nobody's only just one letter. I told you at the beginning, I'm an IC. And when you do this assessment, you'll see as well that you may come out with 2 letters. But under pressure, most of us default to 1. And in a room like this, everybody's under pressure because they're feeling the strain. I become more of a C when I'm under pressure than the I. And that, we're going to have some collisions. And we need to understand what those collisions should look like so we can plan. We're still looking to plan, prepare for this, right? This is where it's going to get a little difficult. So let's explore some of these and how we can manage it. First, we want to take a look at the D against the C. That's my Marcus sponsor with Yvonne, my team lead for learning. And both of them are task first. You notice that, right? They're both task first, which sounds like a common ground. And it's not, though, because their pace is opposite. He wants this meeting a decision now. Yvonne, well, she's trying to still figure things out, what she's got to be able to do. All right. Something's not going to go well there. We got another collision going on with Priya and Dan. This is another one between an I with an S. And Priya and Dan, they're both people first, remember? Again, but they got an opposite pace. Priya's high energy, right? She fills the room. She loves to talk. And Dan, his concerns never surface at all because he's in there pondering, thinking about what's happening. So here's the pattern that I want you to remember, and this is literally all that you need to really understand, is when you have an opposite pace, what does it look like when it collides? And when you got shared priorities, decide whether you're going to hear it or not. Because those task first pairs, they're going to argue in the room, okay? And things are going to start to go sideways really quickly. And people first pairs are going to stay quiet, right? So the loud ones are going to get all of your attention. So I don't want you to forget about our quiet people first and those that have a slower pace, because that is the one, that's the group, the silent ones really cost us our program and our program to fail. So with that, Before we even move on any further, we want to take a look at emotional intelligence in 4 different domains. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we're going to look at it from a different lens. And that lens comes from Daniel Goldman. Okay, because we've all heard about EI, and a lot of us have seen, but Ellie, there's like 5 dimensions of EI. Daniel Goldman, he just really focused on using 4 domains across these 2 axes. You got to regulate and recognize those emotions in yourself, and how does that reflect with you as well as with others. And so that's why I'm using this for this scenario, because if we don't know how we're going to react, then we're not going to be prepared for those situations when they arise. And so having self-management, and it's all about when we look at that left column and understanding yourself, having self-awareness and self-management is going to support you. But you've got to recognize. You got to recognize first, what is that emotion rising up to you in the moment, so that you can take that 1 second pause to regulate if it's moving you into a not so pleasant direction. And it literally can be just that 1 second, as long as you have the awareness to recognize that emotion that's starting to rival up in you. Okay. And now, once you can recognize how that's playing out for you, you got to read it the other way. Okay. From a right column, you need to understand now how others' social awareness and relationship management you're having and recognizing what's in the room with everybody. And when we read it and we look at it from the bottom row, where we're looking at noticing what's happening, and we look at that top row where we regulate how we manage the situation that we're in. And I'll tell you, this is why it's going to really matter in a room of giving feedback where decisions have already been made, and you've got people that want to be resistant, and you're also looking for their help with no authority. All right. Self-awareness is what's going to buy you the 1 second that I mentioned. Just being aware. That's like 90% of what we all got to start with. All right. And that 1 second is going to give you an opportunity to respond rather than react. And that's what what we're managing here. Okay. With time ado, let me keep moving us, because I do want to leave at least 5 minutes at the end for us all. And so with that, Marcus is cutting off Yvonne, and your own fight or flight mode is probably going to be setting off like, how rude is he? And you probably want to just jump in there to help Yvonne, but we want to come at it with a response versus a reaction. And this is where the GROW coaching model is going to come into play, where you can use this in a group setting. You can use this with your team setting. You can use this on an individual setting as well. But what the GROW coaching model is all about is we want people to make their own decisions, and we want people to come up with their own solutions. Think about mom. She just asked some questions, and that's really what the lovely thing is about the GROW model, is it teaches us how to use powerful questions to drive somebody towards a solution that is going to meet their needs, because we might think we know what it is, but we don't always do. And so the G stands for agreeing on what a good outcome is going to look like. Just get that person to say, walk me through what it is you're wanting to achieve. What would resolve what it is? What would it look like to you? The next one is reality, where we are today. So we want to service what the real need is under that stated position. And that is what is happening now. What is driving this need? And what have you already tried? And we look at options. What could we do? What else? So we want to feel that, and it's them answering these questions. All right. And last, we got to get them to commit. And we want them to commit with a timeline so we can get this into agreement. And so a coaching question that you might not be ready for, they're like, Ellie, I don't know how to respond to this. Give yourself grace. That's actually the best question to get, because you don't know the answer. Right. So don't think that it's just about you creating responses or knowing what the solution is for them. And this is one of the issues that one of my others had in the room. Don't you think this is just going to create more work for the people who cannot manage and afford the time the lease? Well, yeah, it's happening, right? Like we know what they're stating to us is really not a question, even though they're asking it. It's really a statement. So how do we manage to that? And answering means really arguing their case. We don't want to argue their case for them in front of everybody else in the room, because we know no matter what the circumstances are, the real concern or a point being scored is what's happening. So how do we solve for it? Let's ask a reality question. Tell me more about that. Who specifically, and what does that extra work look like for them? Ooh, you just got some free information there in the response that you're going to get back. And you'll see how it all plays out in the end. Because coaching is not about softness, it's about refusing to answer the wrong question. And so what I'd like you to do is just take a step back, understanding these 4 personality communication styles, and more would you guess yourself to be. So when you do later on do the assessment, you can kind of bring it back and see what's going on and how close you are to it. All right, we're almost near the end, and we're at part 3, because you got to ask before you can solve. The tool number 3 is what comes in. So let's put this all to work. 20 minutes into my meeting, the room is split. Marcus, we've been around this twice. I just need a go live date. I need to get to the steering committee Thursday with the date. Yvonne, my downward. I'm not signing up for anything. There's like 40 workflows. There's no way I'm going to be able to analyze all of those in like 6 weeks and get everything else done. So the obvious move that we're going to see here then is we're going to split the difference. So let's do a quick analysis and decide on Friday. That's a lot of times the approach that we take. We just set ourselves up for failure, because guess what? Friday's going to come and you're still not going to have the answer. And by the way, don't forget about Dan, because he said nothing for 22 minutes. He's the only person in the room who knows way more about workflows than people actually are aware of. So this is where we can use our GROW model, because the GROW model instead provides you the way we can approach things. So before we land anything, Marcus, I'm putting the question back to him. What do you actually need by Thursday? Yvonne, what do you need before you can commit? I'm getting what their goal is, right? He needs a date. She needs something that's defensible for scope, so she knows what she's going to be doing. Now we're into reality. Yvonne, what would you need to see to size this? And Dan, you've been quiet. Of the 40 odd so workflows, how many do you generally feel people use, Dan? Dan tells us about 8. Oh my gosh, that scope just got easier without us even having to do any effort and work by just asking that reality question to Dan. Then we got some options. So what becomes possible if training specs our scopes to 8 rather than the 40, Yvonne? Is that more achievable? Of course, the room answers. They're committing already. Yes, bring it on. It's not impossible anymore. And now we got to commit with that. Got everybody's agreement. Dan, can you confirm what the 8 are for your team by Wednesday? Because we're Tuesday today. Yvonne, can you size the effort based on what you get by that time? And Marcus, does that give you what you need for Thursday? Oh my goodness, we named everybody. Everybody's got an action to take away. 4 questions, no adjudicating, no splitting. No, nobody has to be told what to think. They all came up with it themselves. That's the ticket to what the GROW coaching model does for us. You already got buy-in. And that orange peel and the flesh, we're back in the kitchen with mom and brother and sister. She needed the orange peel. He needed the flesh. 1 orange. We got 2 needs. We can meet them both in full, but nobody asked the question. Just like in my room, Marcus needs a date. Yvonne needed scope. 1 conversation, both needs. We can fully meet those needs. We're just asking the right questions. Open-ended questions, and don't lead them to the answer that you want them to come to you with. That's a no-no in coaching, okay? So we go back to our scenario. If mom had just peeled the orange peel or even asked what they needed it for, because they didn't say, right? They're just all excited. I want an orange. I want an orange. Mom would immediately been able to give the little girl, her daughter, the orange peel, and she'd be having everything she needs for her meringue pie. And the little boy's got his full orange and feeling full by now. So this is what you want to send after the meeting, because remember what I said before, people want to know, well, what are you going to do with the information that I just gave you? And what PMI calls this is sense making, where people are going to build their understanding of a change through hallway conversations, the rumor, the water cooler discussions. We want to avoid that. So it's so critical for us from a time sensitive perspective to make sure that we get out to everybody what's happening and what was done. So what you want to do, this is a nice simple one, and feel free to screenshot this if you want afterwards. Write down what you said using their words, not yours. When you say you said, I'm talking about your audience. Exactly their words. Don't tidy it up, all right? What you heard, what we heard, all right? So that's the concern underneath. That's where the reality question came in and pays off. You got that answered. You're adding it here. This is literally your follow-up. It's that easy. And then what we're doing, specific named owners, we got them dated, everybody committed, and what we are not doing and why. This is your trust column. This is you being transparent. Most organizations are going to delete this. You don't want to do that. It's so important you identify. We don't have the tools we need today. We're evolving. We're got renewals coming up, so on and so forth, whatever it looks like for your room. Because the why has to be a real reason inside that worldview of theirs, your stakeholders, not yours, right? We're not moving the go live because the license lapse on a date we do not control. Not satisfying, but hey, it's true, right? And it's checkable. I got the validation and everything behind me that that's the way it is. So that turns out to be what people will actually expect and want. So let's close this out. And what's the outcome of my story? And what that room gave me. So Marcus stopped defending and he started defining what he needed, and he asked what he would need to see at the end. His criteria became, guess what? The UAT acceptance test criteria. I got so much solved in this meeting. It's amazing. Yvonne, the room cut her work by 80%. She's happy now. She's also gotten what she needs. And then, of course, we got Dan, right? The ask changed, and so did he. I wasn't clear with Dan. So he was never stated to accept the tools, but he was asked to define what was ready, what ready meant. And he was able to volunteer and own the team at First Adopters. Isn't that awesome? He's actually become one of my leaders and even beyond supporters. Because every one of these came out of the 8 right-hand columns that we talked about at the beginning when it comes to emotional intelligence. It's one of the most facilitators will cheat as that consolation prize, and we don't want to go there, okay? And I know you're probably wondering, what happened to Priya, Ellie? I haven't heard about her. Well, guess what? Priya, she thought the timeline was a joke, remember? Well, guess what? She stopped telling people that the moment she was one of the people setting the time and date with us. Because remember, we're sharing resources. So she supported that change as well. So the same move, but in a different room. If it was the condo, you can ask them to join the finishes panel and not approve the contract. Because they can't approve the contract. They don't have the authority. It's already been done. But they can at least have input, right, on what that common area is going to look like. And how about the park? Ask them to walk the site. Mark the desired, not to approve it, but what their desired paths are. And what about policy? Well, ask them to design the tiebreaker rule, not to accept the policy. Okay. And then, of course, for me, right, we got ready defined rather than believing that the benefits case is going to define what ready looks like. That's not the case, because in every case, a role that uses what they already know is applied to the part that is genuinely open, because you can't control who's going to walk into that session, right? But what we can control is what we promised them before they came in and what you send them afterwards, because everybody's got to stay on the same page. And so with that, your quick reference guide. And if you look in your webinar, you'll be able to retrieve it. There is an icon that has a paperclip on it. If you click on that icon, you'll be able to download the quick reference guide. And for anyone watching the recording, there'll be some instructions provided to you on the video platform on how you can retrieve that document. But I got to say this, and I don't generally say but, because but always makes us feel like something negative's coming. I got something good for you. Just as you see on my slide. 3 things to keep you on point. Know your room, know your audience, KYA, read their style, read the room, get a sense of what kind of communication styles you have going on, and ask before you solve. Don't solve it for them. Use your grow coaching capabilities. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kevin, to see if we might have any questions in chat.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ellie. I learned a lot. I love the stories too. That was fascinating. I love it when people teach using stories and examples. It makes it come to life. Okay, we already had 4 people type in questions while you were presenting, so that's great. Thank you very much. I'll get to those in a second. It's not too late for the rest of you to enter a question. Please type it into the chat window or the questions window. Either way, just get it into the live interface and we will read it out to Ellie. For those of you obviously on the later recording, you can always email a question afterwards to sales@procept.com. Okay, Ellie, first question was from Subani. Subani says, how can I use DISC to understand a whole group of people in a public forum?
I'm going to say it's keywords that you want to listen out for. First thing, you know who the D's are because they're really out there. They're always talking, right? So they're going to be really easy to pinpoint. Those basics that I gave you throughout this presentation for each of those communication style types is the one thing that will help you understand where are folks in the room. The silent ones could be your S's, right? And you've got your I's. So with that being said, the cheat sheet, quick reference guide that I share with you, Subima, you will be able to see in there what I've highlighted for you. And I also sent you to the link for DISC that you can get a real quick synopsis of each of those communication styles. And I hope that helps.
Excellent. Thank you. The next one's more of a comment than a question. It's from Mohammed. Mohammed says, I like your presentation. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mohammed. I really hope that, and I'm going to say this can be put to use like this afternoon, tomorrow, Monday, especially with that quick reference guide.
Excellent. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Animata says, are there any more tips on noticing the wrong question being asked? I think this was when you were talking about the GROW model, I believe.
100%. So I will say this, one of the things that helps me is my urge to want to react and respond with a solution. That's where, Ellie, step back. Hold on a second. Is it really a question or are they actually making a statement on how they feel? And that's how I'm able to identify that that is not a question and why I'm going to go back into my GROW concept. Tell me more about that. What does that look like? I hope that helps. But it truly is that it can be that simple for us.
Okay. One just popped up that's related, so I'll ask it now, not in the order. Monica says, GROW sounds like a sales technique.
Oh, no, it's not. So the Coaching Federation, I can't remember the acronym name. This is a model that has been out there. It's been out there for decades. And when I did my Master's of Education, one of the things that came together was mentoring and coaching. They are 2 different things. And so when we look at coaching, just to sum it up for you, we wear different hats all day long. And I'll use this even with my kids. This works everywhere. It works in your personal life, works at work, it works when you're dealing with customer service, no matter where you're at. Instead of us making assumptions on what we think is the right way to go, we explore and get curious. And that's the critical thing about grow, being curious. Because ultimately, a salesperson, they're not being curious. They're looking for ways that they can sell you what they want to sell. So they're trying to pick up on key things that they can connect back to their product versus allowing you to choose what's going to be the best product for you based on what your needs are, because you know better than any other person does. But thanks for sharing that with us in either case. I appreciate that perspective.
Okay, and then the last comment, we're running out of time, so this will be our last comment, is from JP. JP says, prioritization also works. You could have let the girl have the whole orange, make the pie, then let the boy eat a piece. Then they both get what they want. He just has to wait a bit.
I don't know if he'd feel the same way because he doesn't like meringue pie. He just wants that full orange. But like you gave me, JP, there's other options, and you're absolutely correct. Let them choose the option, though, not you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ellie. That was great, everybody. We're out of time for the day. I really appreciate you doing this for us, and this is just a wonderful event. As I said, this is being recorded. It will be thrown up on YouTube probably within a day or two, so you can go back and re-review it or share it with friends. Please be free to share the link to it with anybody who's interested. This is one in a series of webinars. As I said, we run them about every 2 weeks throughout the year. So wherever you found out about this one, keep your eye out. There are others available, or you can always look at the upcoming webinar schedule at procept.com, procept.com. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a good day.